Well, if you would turn with me to the book of Proverbs, that's where we're going to be today. And Proverbs, we said, is a little different than the other books in that you have to follow the balancing ball a little bit more because we're going to have to bounce all over the place within the book. And that's because a proverb is one of those wise sayings. And, it's definitely different than this, but when you go to get Chinese food, you open up the little cookies and you get the little saying, and you think whether or not it's true or not. Well, a proverb is not like that, because a proverb is actually true. A fortune cookie is not. I'm sorry to burst any bubbles out there. Hopes and dreams shattered all over the place. But a proverb, we need to keep this in mind, that a proverb is not a promise. And I was actually reminded of this last week, and I thought I'd clarify. A proverb is not something that when you read it and say, this is a promise that God is giving me. And so, I'll give you an example. Instead, it's a truism. It's something that generally, in most cases, for most people in all the world, in most times, rings true. It's a principle that you can apply to your life. It's very practical. And that most of the time when you apply these things into your life, it rings true. But I'll give you an example. There's a proverb that says, a gentle answer turns away wrath. So generally, we can say that when somebody's mad at us, that we can de-escalate the situation by speaking gently, calmly, and keeping our cool, trying to de-escalate the situation. And that a lot of times, that'll cause that person to realize, oh, wow, I'm getting way too excited here, and calm them down. But sometimes you run into a really stubborn person who really just wants to fight, and the fact that you're calm makes them mad. So a proverb is something that's generally true most of the time, and it's good principles to follow, whether it comes true or not. So that's what we're dealing with here, and we are going to be talking about something that's very, very practical. And that is planning. And for those of you who are really good at planning and executing your plans and don't have a problem with this, I'm going to ask you to take extra good notes, come on Wednesday, and help all the rest of the people who are not. Because it's either an area that you are good at, or it's an area that you just kind of fumble around, you kind of chaotically, this is my world, and I just kind of jump from thing to thing. I'm very sporadic, all over the place. And I have a hard time sitting down and really planning things. And then when I do, it's hard for me to actually stick to it because that's boring. And by the way, this is something that for me actually just kind of comes more natural. I've always been more regimented and want to get things down, planned, and writing in front of me and then work it. I don't like spur-of-the-moment stuff. Some of you may be like that. But this is why Proverbs is so practical. Because it deals with things that you can read it, and it's the kind of things that if you were to just detach the verse from it and hand it around your office, around your neighborhood, people would read it and they'd look at it the same way they do in the restaurant. And they'd look at it and go, wow, that's actually pretty good. I like that. And they might actually take it with them and bring it out from time to time and think about it. And think, how can I make this more a part of my life and how I can function? That's why it's also really good for kids. Proverbs is really good because it's really simple statements that they can even memorize. And it deals with day-to-day practical stuff in their world. It's not dealing with, the technicalities of the Trinity. It's dealing with planning. It's dealing with money. It's dealing with friendship. It's dealing with all sorts of things that even in their little world they deal with already. And you can teach them lots of practical things through the book of Proverbs. And so we're going to enter into the world of a kid here today and jump into Proverbs. And the first thing that Proverbs wants you to know about planning, and this should be common sense, is don't plan to do evil. Don't plan to do evil. And what it says in Proverbs 3:29 is, do not plot harm against your neighbor who lives trustfully near you. In Proverbs 6, verse 16 through 18, there are 6 things the Lord hates, 7 that are detestable to him: haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked schemes, and feet that are quick to rush into evil. And then in chapter 24, verse 8, it says this, that he who plots evil will be known as a schemer. You guys are laughing at Mr. Burns there. And that is the epitome of what this verse is. Someone who is using their time, their energy, their money, their thinking, their thought process, their spare time, all that kind of stuff, to find ways to get something, to find ways to put themselves ahead and to push somebody else aside. And the Bible says don't do that. And one of the most practical reasons why it says not to do this is because it's a waste of time. And I don't know if you've ever thought about it like this, but if you're spending your time plotting somebody else's evil that you're trying to kick the legs out from under their stool, you're not doing what it takes to actually put yourself in a better position to just advance normally. If you're jealous and you're kind of going around the office and you're jealous that somebody got a promotion and you wish that you had gotten the promotion, instead of plotting for them to have their demise and for them to look bad and spending all your time in that, why don't you spend your time doing your work faithfully? And when you get done with your work, looking for how you can help in the office, finding ways to continue your education, get better at what you do. And you spend your time in building yourself up and growing in your character and growing in maturity, growing as a leader. And don't worry about the other person. You see, when you plot evil, it's actually a huge waste of your time. It's not a good plan. And what's going to happen if you succeed in that plan? The other person gets hurt, but you haven't changed. And so even in the office, maybe you take that person out, but then somebody else may be getting in their place instead of you because you haven't changed. The next thing that it says is that we should plan with prayer. Proverbs 16:3 says, "Commit to the Lord whatever you do, and your plans will succeed." And again, I have to remind you, this is not a promise. It's very easy to read this and say, well, if I commit it to the Lord, if I lay my plans, my business plans on the table in front of him and I say, God, this is it, and I'm going to pray and I'm going to give this to you, that he's going to, okay, you did it, check, so succeed. Success is coming your way. It's generally true, not always true. But in a sense, it is always true, because if you commit everything to him, then you will succeed, because you will have done exactly what he's called you to do. One of the most fruitful, important things that you could possibly do before you sit down to execute something is to get some time away, be by yourself with you and God in prayer, silence, revival, and maybe a notepad. And just go and say, God, I have an idea in my mind. I have something that I feel that you're leading me towards. God, I want to commit this to you, and I want to hear from you. I want to know, is this the direction you want me to go? Is this the thing you want me to do? Is this where you want to invest my time, my money, my energy? God, I want to hear from you first before I go to anybody else. But then it says, after you've done that you should plan with counsel. Proverbs 15:22 says, plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors they succeed. Chapter 20, verse 18 says, make plans by seeking advice. If you wage war, obtain guidance. One of the other important things that you can do. After you've committed it to the Lord, after you've spent the time in prayer, after you know this is the direction that he wants me to go, that's the vision, that's the picture, but how that's going to look is going to need some wise people around you, some people that you trust and you respect and you look up to, that you say, what do you think about this? It's people that you can bounce things off of. It's people that will help you think about the downside, the things you're not thinking about, the potential reactions to what you're going to do. And a person who didn't do this well was Solomon's own son. And if you read Proverbs, it's very blatantly directed towards his son. It says, my son, listen to my teaching. Apply this to your life. And Solomon's son was Rehoboam, and Solomon was the wisest, richest man. He was the king of Israel, and his house took like 7 times as long to build as the temple for God. This was a guy that was pretty successful, well respected, and he passed the kingdom on to his son. And, well, Solomon got that success because he taxed the people pretty high. And the people were kind of sick of it, and they didn't want to pay that much money. And so they were coming to Rehoboam and saying, would you lighten the load of your father? You know, the temple's built, your house is built, everything's good, okay, we can lighten up a bit here. And what Rehoboam did is he first went to the wise counselors that his father had in his palace. And he asked them, and he said, what do you think I should do? And they said, you know, Solomon did tax pretty high, and this is a great way to show the people you care about them, have compassion, that you want to serve them as their king. What you should do is you should listen to them, and you should lighten their load, ease their burden. And then Rehoboam goes to a second group, and that's his friends, the youngsters, kids he hung out with. And he says, what do you think I should do? And they said, man, these people don't respect you, and they won't respect you if you give in to them. What you should do is you should raise the taxes to show them that you're the boss. Who do you listen to? The young ones. You remember what happened? The kingdom of Israel actually split into 2. The northern and the southern kingdom, and it never recovered from it. Seek wise counsel. And then it says that we should work our plan. Work our plan. There's no sense making a plan and putting all the effort in to have a plan if you're not going to actually do it. Proverbs 21:5 says this: the plans of the diligent lead to profit, as surely as haste leads to poverty. Carrying out a plan is where everything really either makes it or breaks it. You can spend all the time in the world talking about good ideas and coming up with plans for good ideas, but if you're not able to actually execute on the plan, then all of that time was actually just wasted. And most of the problems that we encounter, whether it's in marriages or finances or in careers and jobs, all that kind of stuff, most of the problems is not because there wasn't a good idea, it wasn't because there wasn't a plan, but it's because we're just not doing the plan. It's the couple that sits down, works together, gets the budget down, and they say, this is how much money we make, this is how much we're going to spend in each of these areas, and then they go to the store and go, ooh, that looks nice, let's get that. And it completely blows the whole budgeting process apart. There's a man named Scott Belsky who wrote a book called Making Ideas Happen. And what he said was that it's not that things fail because they're not good ideas. Things fail, projects fail, because when you're in the starting point and you get the idea in your mind, you think, oh my gosh, this is such a good idea. You go to God and he gives you the go-ahead, and you go to other people and they say, this is a good idea, we'll back you. And then you get past the excitement part to the execution part. And all of a sudden you're dealing with paper, and you're dealing with training and people and all the stuff that's not so exciting as the idea and the vision. And then another idea comes into your head. And you go, ooh, shiny. Let's do that. And you get all excited and ramped up about that, and then you just kind of forget about the other one. It just kind of plateaus and goes and dies. And then you got another one in there, and then another idea comes. And he calls that the project plateau. It's where you kind of lose interest, and it's not as exciting, and you have to keep going through that to break through to the other side. I had a youth pastor that was kind of horrible at this. He was a great guy. He was an incredibly outgoing guy. He loved by all the kids in the youth group. But in terms of sticking with stuff, he was horrible at it. And I don't think we ever finished a curriculum that he started the whole time I was with him. We'd be going the 10 Commandments, we'd get to Commandment 5, and then all of a sudden he'd switch gears over to this. And the same thing with the philosophy and the leadership and the training. We'd be going with Sun Life, and then he'd go over to Purpose Driven, and then the cells and all this kind of stuff, and we'd just be bouncing around going, what are we supposed to do? Well, he wasn't sticking to something. He wasn't just picking a plan, knowing that's where the direction, and sticking to it. But what he was doing was the next step, and that is be willing to alter your plan. Be willing to alter your plan. Proverbs 16:9 says, in his heart a man plans his course, but the Lord determines his steps. Proverbs 19:21 says, many are the plans in a man's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails. As good as your idea is, as much as you've committed it to the Lord, as much as you've sought wise counsel, as much as you've been carrying through, God still has the ultimate ability to say, we're changing course. And this is where it comes around. At the beginning, you commit your plan to the Lord, and at the end, you need to be willing to let him steer the ship. You need to be willing for him to plot the course. And here's a practical to that. The Apostle Paul was a brilliant strategist. If you read the account of the book of Acts, following the leading of the Holy Spirit, he would go to very strategic places in order to preach the gospel, in order to get the church moving. And one of his missionary journeys, he had plans to go into Asia. And he starts to go into Asia, and resistance. Can't go. Things don't work out. He turns the other way. Okay, Bithynia. We're going to go to Bithynia. And he starts going towards the road. No, don't go to Bithynia. Okay, well, let's camp. And then he has a vision of a man in Macedonia saying, come over here and help us. They get up in the middle of the night and they go to Macedonia. His plan was to go to Asia. But God said, change of plans. We're going to reroute, and you're going to go over to Macedonia. And he had a successful ministry over there. Successful with a few beatings, but successful nonetheless. So lastly, what I want to do is I want to give you some practical steps. Some hands and feet to this. And the first one is that you have to write your plan down. Some of you think, no, I don't. I'm pretty good. I can keep things mentally sorted and kind of up here. No, you can't. You're not that good. You need to write it down. And part of what writing it down means is that you have it in front of you. You can see for yourself, and you can kind of flow through it and see, does this really actually make sense? Does this flow? Is there stuff that when I'm looking at this that I'm seeing that I'm missing? And it's something that you can adapt and adjust, but you have it there in front of you. It's not kind of a random file you have to sort through in your brain to get to the right place. But you need to write it down. And I'm going to say this, maybe especially for some of you women, but you need to write it down in one place. Something about having a purse is that you have lots of room to stick a whole bunch of stuff. And your little notes end up on little sticky pads and backs of receipts, and they just kind of get stuffed down in there. And that's not helpful, because when you go to want to use it, now who was I praying for? And you kind of have to sort through it. It's a huge waste of time, because you have to sort through a whole bunch of stuff to get what you want. If you have it in one place and you just have it separated, these are the people I'm praying for. This is, where I've spent my money. This is the thing over here, that my to-do list. All that kind of stuff. And you just have it separated, but you have it in one place. You know where to go. It's much more accessible, easier. Secondly, when you make a plan, you need to consider the potential downside. Sometimes we don't want to hear anything about a downside. We just like the idea, and we want to move forward with it. And we think it's a good idea. I'm just going to go. I'm energetic about it. I'm passionate about it. I'm just going to go. You need to know, what are the potential downsides. You need to know what you're up against. You need to know what kind of sacrifices you're going to have to make in order to execute the plan. Next, you need to always include fun and margin for error in your plans. Sometimes the mistake that we make, especially if we're trying to make like a budget and we have a pretty tight budget, what we do is we go to such extremes and we say, you know what, I'm listening to Dave Ramsey, and he says I need to get rid of debt, and so I'm going to get rid of debt, and so I'm going to throw every single penny I have at debt, and I'm not going to have any cable, I'm not going to have any phone, and so if you want to get in contact with me, good luck. And we're never going to eat out, we're not going to do anything, we're just going to save. We're going to get rid of that debt. Well, what happens is eventually you get sick and tired of not doing anything fun, and everything's just stress and busyness and homework, and it's not really livable. So what happens is you drive by In-N-Out and you turn in there. Your car just starts turning in because you need fun. And the other thing is that maybe you don't plan for stuff like your car is going to break down. Your computer is just all of a sudden just not going to turn on. Edgar, that made you happy. I can see that. But we don't plan for things that are going to go wrong. We plan things so tightly in our schedules and in our budgets, and we plan for everything to work out just right. There's no margin for error, and when something goes wrong, we think, I worked so hard to save that $200, now I have to spend it in getting a new tire. We need to build in margin for error and fun into our plans. Next, you need to accept the size of your plate. Some of you could just go nonstop all day and just never quit. You can always find room to schedule more things in, and you just go until you just kind of pass out somewhere, and then you get up the next day and you do the exact same thing. Most of us can only do that for a certain amount of time. My last semester in seminary, I took 5 classes at the same time as working a full-time job and doing the part-time internship here, and Amy was pregnant. And I was leaving at like 6 in the morning, and I was getting home at about 11:30, dropping straight into bed, and then getting up the next day. And I did it successfully, but you can only do it for a certain amount of time, or else your body is just going to blow out. And most of us, let's just be honest, that's not the kind of person we are. We get up in the morning, and we can't do anything until we stared at the wall for about an hour. And we've sipped a couple of cups of coffee. And then we get up, we go on to our first thing, and then we sit down again. And you just need to accept the size of your plate. Accept who you are. Accept your personality. And know that if you want to add something, chances are you're going to have to take something away. And it's a matter not of choosing between good and bad. It's a matter of choosing between good and best. What do you want to spend your time on? Next, you want to use technology in a way that it doesn't rule over you. And some of you have no problem with this because you don't like technology. But then, technology affects you because those in your life, if you don't Skype, they won't call you, right? If you don't email, they won't write you. So it does affect you. But others of us who love technology, we need to learn to not let technology rule our life. You know, it's like, going to Red Robin with my family and then looking over in another booth and you see another dad with his family, but he's not really there. He's like there in person, but he's checking football scores and looking up Facebook and doing all sorts of stuff, and his kids are like, Dad, Dad, Dad. And it's like they're not even there. Don't be that kind of guy or girl or kid, for that matter. Single people, when you're on a date, be with the person you're with. Don't be with your friends texting. And you need to schedule when you're going to check your email. Because if you don't schedule it, you're going to do it all day, constantly. And especially now that it's on your phone, and it'll follow you, and it'll beep at you, and it'll tell you that you need to check me. This is important. You need to plan to turn your phone off. This is a little bit hard for me because if I turn my phone off, one of you might go in the hospital at midnight. Okay? But sometimes it's more just not physically turning the phone off, it's just kind of setting it over here. And then I check it every once in a while to make sure you guys are okay. But you need to plan for that. Next, you need to sync up your plans with anybody that you need to sync them with. If you have your schedule, it doesn't do any good for a husband to make up his schedule and the plan it if he doesn't communicate that to his wife. Because what's going to happen is the wife has her schedule, and then you never communicate with each other, and then all of a sudden you say, oh, I have an appointment at 10:30. She says, no, you don't. We have to go over to this thing, and you either need to cancel that or she needs to accept that she needs to reschedule. But a lot of times, a lot of things that we plan to get done don't get done because we have to reschedule just because we didn't communicate. We didn't sync up. And we could have gotten everything done. And then lastly, you may just need help. In this area, you may just need help. Like you look at your marriage and you need a plan to make it better. But you don't know the first thing of what you're doing or how to do that. And so you just need help. You look at your money and it looks like it might as well be complex algebra to you because you don't do money. You need help. And so Proverbs is incredibly practical. And all of us have areas that we're strong at and areas that we're weak in. And Proverbs has stuff to say about all of it. And the goal would be that those of us who are strong in an area would help those who are weak. And that we would find each other. And that we would link with each other and we would help each other. And that we would find ourselves in line with God's principles and setting ourselves up for success. Not guaranteed success, but setting yourself in line for success.